You said yesterday Canada is committed to working with the Philippines and international partners to bring the group responsible for John Ridsdel's murder to justice. What specifically does that mean?
First of all, let me reiterate our outrage at the cold-blooded murder by terrorists of Canadian citizen. Our heart goes out to John Ridsdel's families, obviously, who are going through a terrible time right now. But also, our thoughts go out to Mr. Hall and his family. Obviously, they are very, very concerned for his safety as he's still, and the two others, as they are still in terrorist hands. And we need to make sure that, given that this is an ongoing situation, we be very careful not to endanger with a release of information or speculation on the situation. But I will emphasize that Canada is determined to bring these terrorist criminals to justice, and we're working with international allies and specifically the Philippines to ensure that indeed these criminals, these terrorists, will be brought to justice. I do, however, want to make one thing perfectly crystal clear. Canada does not and will not pay ransom to terrorists, directly or indirectly. And there are very direct and concrete reasons for this. First of all, obviously, this is a significant source of funds for terrorist organizations that then allow them to continue to perpetrate deadly acts of violence against innocents around the world. But more importantly, paying ransom for Canadians would endanger the lives of every single one of the millions of Canadians who live, work, and travel around the globe every single year. Permettez-moi d'être absolument clair.
Please allow me to be very clear.
Canada
does not pay and will not pay ransom to terrorists. This is something we will not do, either directly or indirectly. It's something that would put more money into the pockets of terrorists so that they can continue to perpetrate their violent acts against innocents around the world, but especially is something that would endanger the lives of all Canadians who live, travel, and work around the globe each year. This is something that we don't do and we will not do.
The Philippines is doing all it can in this situation, and are you concerned that they perhaps don't have the tools or ability to help Mr. Hall?
We are working with our allies, including the Philippines, to ensure that the perpetrators of this heinous act are brought to justice.
Mr. Trudeau, thanks for taking questions. I have a question about the concerns Alberta. We're home of the oil sands. You had a substantial discussion about China and Canada's relationship with China. And so I'd like to ask you, what are the chances that your government will remove the effective ban on investment by state-owned companies in the oil patch, specifically Chinese?
We are always concerned about how we create economic growth for Canadians, how we make sure we're creating good jobs, how we make sure we help areas going through difficult times like Alberta, particularly since Alberta has been such a significant contribution to this country economically over the past years. We continue to engage on issues of trade, on issues of foreign investment, on issues that are going to create good jobs for Canadians and, quite frankly, economic growth that benefits everyone. It's important that we do that in a responsible, reflective way, and that is part of the discussions that we had today and yesterday.
So just to follow up, and if you could repeat that in French as well, do you think it's a good idea to remove the ban on state-owned investment by Chinese firms in the oil patch? In French too, thanks.
We continue to believe that foreign direct investment is important to draw in the kind of capacity to develop our economy and to create good jobs for Canadians. And we will always make decisions based on what is in Canada's interest, what is in the interest of the Canadian workers and the Canadian jobs and the communities and economy that is affected by investments like this. Nous sommes
we are very aware of the fact that attracting foreign investment creates jobs and creates benefits for Canadians here in Alberta and across the country, but we'll always make sure that it's done correctly and responsibly, which is what people expect from us and what we are always looking at, and we will continue to reflect on.
James Wood from the Calgary Herald. You noted that you came to Alberta because of the economic situation of the province. Over the last 3 days, has anything been accomplished that would make a difference to the Albertans who are feeling the effects of the poor economy at the moment?
Well, the work we are doing is all about delivering a government that Canadians can have a greater degree of trust in, trust to build a strong economy, trust to protect the environment, trust to create opportunities for future generations to get good jobs and to prosper. We are entirely focused on how we're going to help Canadians right across the country, but particularly here in Alberta, because that's where we are right now, to build and grow in ways that are going to benefit. That's what we discussed today in general terms and in specific terms. Will have positive impacts here in Alberta and elsewhere across the country.
Sorry, and are there specific terms of actions you are considering that would be a benefit to Alberta at this point?
We continue to monitor the situation around employment numbers. We continue to be very aware that one of the fundamental responsibilities of any government is to get our resources to market. But the way to do that in the 21st century is to make sure that it's done responsibly, sustainably, in partnership with Indigenous Canadians and with communities affected by various projects. And that work of building those relationships, of setting into place those processes that will allow for that is what we're continuing to do.
On that subject of pipelines, it's come up a lot during these 3 days. Would you be open to Northern Gateway if it took another route, for example, one that ended in Prince Rupert instead of Kitimat?
I'm not going to speculate on hypothetical routes. What I will say is the Great Bear Rainforest is no place for a pipeline, for a crude pipeline.
Can you tell me what's changing your thinking on pipelines?
There is no changing on my thinking. My thinking has always been that we need to get our resources to market, but we need to do that in responsible, sustainable, thoughtful ways. The previous government refused to understand that you cannot separate what's good for the environment and what's good for the economy. The Canadians demand that we build a stronger economy while protecting the environment at the same time, and that is what I have always been committed to. That's what our ministers are committed to, and that indeed is what Canadians expect of this government, to create economic growth and protect the environment at the same time. And whether it's pipelines or other issues, that's the lens we go to on that.
En français, s'il vous plaît.
In French, please.
Mes réflexions sur les oléoducs ont toujours été
thoughts on pipelines have always remained the same. We need to export our resources responsibly and sustainably in partnership with the communities, be they Aboriginal or across the country. The previous government did not understand that there is no longer a choice to be made between the environment and the economy. We have to work with them together, and this is exactly what we are working very hard on with regard to pipelines and resource development and a more prosperous economy for everyone.
I understand your message about Canada not negotiating with terrorists or giving over ransom indirectly or directly, but there are lots of other countries, European ones that we would consider friends, like France, who do that. And I'm wondering, given that sort of mixed messaging from countries, how does that endanger the lives of everyone, Canadians traveling? Would you like everyone to get on the same page with that?
I received a phone call this morning from David Cameron, who was expressing his condolences on Mr. Ridsdel's death. He had a Canadian and a British citizenship, so Mr. Cameron, of course, was expressing his sympathies to the family and to our country. And we actually had a very direct conversation where the UK does have a firm position, like Canada, of not paying ransom. We agreed that it is something that we are going to make sure that we do bring up with our friends and allies around the world as we come to grips with the fact that the world is a dangerous place, and we need to make sure that terrorists understand that they cannot continue to fund their crimes and their violence from taking innocents hostage.
En français aussi là-dessus.
J'ai eu une conversation avec le Premier
I
ministre
had
de
a
la Grande-Bretagne
conversation
ce matin,
with
David Cameron,
the
qui
UK Prime
exprimait
Minister
ses sympathies
Cameron,
sur,
who called
John
to
Ridsdel,
extend
qui
his
était un
sympathies
citoyen canadien
for
et
John Ridsdel, who was a Canadian and
on
UK
s'est mis
citizen,
d'accord parce que-
and we
parce que,
agreed
la
because
Grande-Bretagne a la même politique que le Canada
the
de ne
UK
pas,
has the same policy as
payer
Canada,
des rançons.
which is not to
Et
pay
nous sommes mis
ransoms.
d'accord,
And we
que nous allons
agreed
continuer
that we would
d'encourager
continue
et
to encourage
de
and
demander à nos alliés
ask our
de garder
allies
cette même position parce
to
que
maintain this
les
position,
terroristes
because
doivent apprendre que ce n'est pas une
terrorists
façon
need
de-
to learn
de
that this is
financer,
not a way
leurs
to
exploits, et
finance
surtout,
their
que
exploits
ce ne
or their
peut pas être
activities,
payant,
but
de-
especially
d'enlever,
that it can't be
des
profitable
touristes ou des citoyens,
to kidnap tourists
des
or
pays occidentaux.
citizens
And I understand
from
you're
Western
limited by what you can
countries.
say given the situation with Mr. Hall, but Bob Bray says that the government was involved at the very top level in terms of negotiating or trying to connect with these terrorists. Can you just characterize how high this was, how aware the government was, how involved people were in trying to stop this from happening?
I've seen a number of those media reports. Let me just say that they are wrong and they are false.
Last question, dernière question.
Peut-être à ce sujet-là, Monsieur Trudeau,
Maybe
est-ce
on
que
this
vous étiez
subject?
vous-même impliqué dans les
Were you
communications
yourself
dans ce
involved
dossier-là?
in the communications in this file?
Le Canada prend très au sérieux
Canada
la
takes very
sécurité,
seriously
de
the
ses
safety
citoyens.
of its citizens.
Mais je n'étais pas moi-même impliqué
I was not personally involved
ces négociations
in
ou
these
ces
negotiations
communications.
or
Vous avez parlé des
communications.
liens avec le gouvernement
You
philippin. Est-ce que
spoke
vous avez
about
demandé
relationships
aux
with the
autorités
Philippine government. Did
de
you ask civil authorities
diminuer leurs
to
attaques contre le groupe terroriste Abu Sayyaf
reduce
pour
their
essayer
attacks
peut-être d'établir
against
des
the
liens
terrorist group
avec le groupe et essayer de sauver
to
l'otage
try to
Robert Hall?
Non,
save
la
Robert
conversation
Hall,
que j'ai eue avec
the hostage?
le président Aquino,
No, the conversation I had with
et,
President Aquino
les conversations que nous continuons à avoir avec
the
nos alliés
conversations
avec les
we
Philippines,
continue to have with the
sont
Philippines
sur l'importance de
are on the
traduire en
importance
justice,
of
ces-
translating to
ces
justice
criminels,
these
mais
criminals,
aussi,
but also to
de faire ce qu'on peut pour
do
passer
what
le
we
message,
can to spread the message
que nous préoccupons énormément
that we are
de la
extremely
sécurité,
concerned
des
about
Canadiens,
the security of
mais que nous
Canadians,
n'allons pas,
but
payer
that
de
we will
rançon.
not pay any ransoms.
My conversations with President Aquino of the Philippines were concentrated on ensuring that we bring these terrorists to justice, while at the same time ensuring the continued safety of Canadians while not in any circumstances paying a ransom to terrorist organizations or terrorists. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.